Well, Singapore itself is very developed. It's very first world. In the city centers, there's a lot of tall buildings. It's very, like, you see the skylines, the New York City skyline, things like that. You picture that. There's a place called Marina Bay. They have what's called a merlion there. And it's a lion head attached to a mermaid body, so like fishtail kind of thing. And it's a very, a touristy type site, and that's where you see the skyline, the Singapore skyline. Very beautiful. There's lots of lights everywhere, and Singapore is very organized as well. With the transportation, if you can find an MRT station, you're not going to get lost. Because everything's within 15-20 minutes walking distance. There's buses and taxis that are going everywhere. They're all interconnected. So you literally really can't get lost unless you try to in Singapore, which was nice. The transportation was quite efficient. Sometimes, depending on where you needed to go, the most it could take would probably be an hour and a half if you're going from like one side of the island to the other. So, it was very efficient. Like before, it was very clean. There's lots of food everywhere. Lots of hawker stalls. Those are just like little places where they would, like little individual businesses, they run around with this kind of a cooking station on wheels, and then just make you like a Romley burger or some fried rice or something like that. And there's little sections where they have little cafeterias kind of thing, like outside. Which is nice, and they're everywhere, so you can always find food. Like Provo, you have a little sectioned off, you have a house that sits on one little plot of land, but you rarely get that in Singapore. You'd have to get to the more rich parts of town, which we really didn't get to because a lot of them were gated off and things like that. Most of it was flats or apartment complexes, super tall. Some of them would be close to 20, 30 stories or floors, and you'd just be living in this little apartment building. Some were very nice. Us, as for our missionary apartment, it was nice. It was bigger than the ones that you would get in Malaysia. The cost, though, it was very decent. It wasn't extravagant by any means. Had a couple bedrooms and a kitchen. Everything there's no carpet there in anything you go to because it's just too hot and it gets too dirty. So it's all tile or linoleum or something like that, mostly tile. But that apartment, if I remember right, was about 3,000 to 4,000, somewhere in that range, Sing dollars a month. So it's like 75 cents US to one Sing dollar or something like that. It was when I was there. So it was pretty expensive, and then they just got more expensive from there. So housing was very expensive. Even if you got like a little dumpy one-bedroom apartment, it was still kind of expensive just because it's an island. There's not a whole lot of space, and so things just cost a lot. The whole layout of the city, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of big buildings. There's a place called Orchard Road where you could do a lot of street contacting. It was a main tourist site. Lots of shops, malls and things like that. Just tons and tons of people. You'd always see street performers. Some are quite fun to watch. Some guys would have like these little glass balls, and they'd be like moving them on their arms, and you had no idea how. That would get a lot of attention. And then you can just like talk to people while they're watching it. Just like, hey, we're missionaries from the church. Kind of just plug it in that way, or just start talking to them normally, and they'd start talking back, and then start a natural conversation, and then just talk to them about why you're there and stuff. So things like that, they were fun, to go and see the city. It was very beautiful. It was basically a big New York type thing, just slammed right into this jungle, but it was much cleaner than New York. You kind of see the trash on the ground, but it was much more clean, much more lit up. People there are very, very nice. Sometimes, though, they were very busy, and so it made it hard for them to actually want to talk to you, which was kind of a letdown. You kind of see that whenever you get into more developed areas. The busier it is, the more developed it is, the better the type of economy. The people are just naturally more busy, so they don't really have time for religion. Some of the people would say, but they're still very nice. They, like I said, they have the Marina Bay that's very touristy. They have a zoo there. They have this little sectioned off mini island that's like a theme park. They have botanical gardens. They have a lot that you can see there. And just walking the streets is quite pretty in itself. The jobs there, a lot of them were business oriented, at least from what we had encountered. It's just kind of like here, there's jobs everywhere. There's taxi drivers, little chefs and cooks that have their own little hawker stall, or big businessmen. There's doctors. There's computer science guys. You see a lot of the guys that just run little shops in night markets. They kind of do that on the side, or that's their whole thing. You even see guys on, what do you call them? The little carriages that are driven by a bike, a little guy on the bike. It's just like a pedal bike, and they just have a little carriage on the back. I forgot what those are called. But you'd see those things running all around. So jobs there are kind of normal, like here, at least in Singapore. Crime, there wasn't a whole lot of, at least in Singapore. There might be some minor, petty theft. I really never saw anything that would suggest there was crime. There was no graffiti. There was no like rundown places. Oh, sometimes there was rundown places, but they weren't like, the stereotypical, oh, there's a meth lab, or there's drugs going on, or there's some, criminal-esque type people. You don't really see that a whole lot. Most of they're very professional there. Honestly, if anybody were to do crime, it wouldn't be in Singapore. They would go to Malaysia. So, because it'd just be easier to do that way. The weather there is usually always raining. It's very hot. I always dreaded the days where it rained in the morning and then stopped like an hour or two later, because the sun would come out and then it would just get super humid because it would evaporate everything, and you'd get soaked from the bottom up instead of from the top down, even if it rained. It was mostly just rain and hot. The temperatures usually stayed about the same. And it was kind of hotter in Singapore just because it was a city. There wasn't a whole lot of place that he could go. Like typically cities are more hot than others just because of the cars and the buildings and the heat reflecting off of everything. So Singapore tended to be a little hotter than most. One island, one country, one city. That's really I think, if I'm right, if I can remember right, the capital for Singapore is Singapore. It's its own thing. There were a lot of people, probably 5-10 million in this little. There's probably even more. I'm not sure, but it was very compact. You had to get friendly with your neighbor because, there's everyone. Everyone's next to everyone. You're rubbing shoulders with everyone, no matter where you go.